Well, Stephen, it would have been nice if you'd have even taken the car off the trailer for us. You've just come back from Driftmasters. What are the changes you've had to make to the car this year to get in?
Quite a lot to the car over the off-season. So we applied back in October, and we knew it was going to be a thing maybe around the October, November time, to bring the car mainly up to regulations in terms of safety. The biggest thing with the car is that we had to upgrade the fuel system. In going to Driftmasters, we had to move to an FIA bladdered fuel cell. So what that means is that instead of just an empty metal vessel, the fuel needs to be enclosed in I think it's a polyurethane bag. Now, it was like F1 technology where they're meant to be puncture proof in a crash. So there's videos out there, people try to put blades through them and you can't cut them. But we had to go to that. So that was probably the biggest change we had to make. Fortunately, at the end of last season, through our prize from podiums at Drift League, we got some funding for a new fuel cell, but we upgraded it to a Pyrotect FIA compliant fuel cell that incorporated the bladder with a foam internals and then a Nuke CFC unit. So the CFC unit is a triple pump housing. We're using a dual pump 450 Walbra setup. So the system's capable of like 1700 horsepower now that it can flow and deliver to an engine. But that was probably the main change. So that was a lot of works because the whole back end of the car had to be redesigned. So we chopped everything basically up to the suspension tiles and everything was redesigned at the back of the car. So it meant fuel cell, the CFC unit, lines, filters, new ethanol content sensors, temperature sensors, pressure sensors, rail, regulators, injectors, because we had to. One of the big changes as well, in line with the fuel system, is that we have changed the fuel itself and stepped away from petroleum, and we're now running ethanol E85. So in doing that, you have to make everything PTFE because the ethanol will just kill and eat anything rubber or plastic. The complete fuel system has been redesigned, and while we were in the back end, we renewed the coolant system. So new LSR radiator, new lines and a new fan setup, which has actually been a big upgrade to the car, and it means that this car, after a bit of testing, we could lap after lap this car, whereas previously if you really knew this car, it wasn't a hot lap car. It could go out and do competition, no problem, but anything like a Driftland day, it could just about handle a session before it was overheating, but now we don't have any problems at all with the coolant. So fuel system, coolant and exhaust was a big change for us as well. So we stepped it up from a 3-inch system onto a 4-inch system. The guys at Peregrine who done most of this work and have been a major help and contribution to this car and the whole setup, they did inform us that we might run into issues when we go for mapping on the 3-inch exhaust. We were nearly at the flow limits of a 3-inch, but when you added into things like switching to ethanol, where you need to inject 130% of the fuel to make the same power as you do on petrol, you're then producing more exhaust gas flow. We also had our wastegate recirculated back into the exhaust. That was a rule that came about from the last season of the British Drift Championship. Now, we no longer needed to run that, so we went back to an external screamer pipe and then upgraded from basically the turbo housing back to a 4-inch, true 4-inch full setup. We were going to add a silencer in at the back, but the likes of the events we're going to don't really need to be noise compliant, so we've got a tiny little silencer on the back, and that was most of the mechanical upgrades that we needed done to the car. There's a lot of little things, but the other things to make the whole package compliant was the safety side of it. So you needed prop hoops, gearbox, surround shields, bell housing shields, everything that can basically go wrong. And for years, people have been like wrecking prop shafts, and it's been coming through the tunnel and nearly cutting off people's legs. Danny Herr's was probably one of the worst ones I'd seen. So they've introduced rules where you need prop loops to contain all things like this. So there was a lot of fabrication changes to crash bar and cradle designs for the fuel cell. So there's a lot of fabrication work over the winter. Even for myself, one of the last things to get Driftmasters compliant was a whole new racewear package. So we had to have a new race suit, all up to FIA current regs. So Miguel Motorsport helped us out with that, and we ended up with a new suit, underwear, so Nomex top and bottoms, socks, which was a new one for us, but everything needs to be Nomex now.
Race socks?
Race socks.
You know you've made it when you get race socks.
They don't do race Calvin Klein, so we've not made it just yet, but we got socks, gloves, boots, balaclava, that's a new one as well. If you had any facial hair, that was a must, but I think for that season you had to wear a balaclava no matter what, so if it wasn't already uncomfortable in the car, say by the time you've got your new Nomex stuff on, which the new stuff is really thick, and then a dual layer race suit on top of it, then with a balaclava, then your helmet, then get harnessed up, putting your hands on, sitting in a car that's already probably internal temps, probably like 60 degrees. It's a very, very uncomfy place to be. And after a lap's done, you can't wait to get out the thing. So there were a lot of stuff in terms of making the car compliant and like us in terms of safety and racewear stuff. The guys at Peregrine done a lot of fabrication work. Don't judge it just now because the car is minging.
Whenever we take this car to shows or anything, I tell people this car's a war machine. This thing's out every month getting sent round corners.
It's on a trailer right now because we're here to get work done, and the band's getting work done in that as well, but we're literally fresh from an event, so it's how she should be.
So that sounds like an awful lot of work, Stephen. Is it worth it?
In short, yeah, of course it is. It's a lot of long, sleepless nights, especially when like we're not a professional race team, like as much as we're trying to be. But at the end of the day, I'm still working a full-time job, working rotating shifts, coming home to family and family life when everybody's in bed. Like right now, yep, it's what time are we at, 9 o'clock? Or?
It's nearly 11.
A lot of late nights, and it can be hard. And especially when things start going wrong. So we had 6 months, pretty much, no, maybe a wee bit longer actually, in terms of like from knowing that the car was going to Driftmasters. Call it 6 months, but it seems like a long time to get things done. But see, historically with motorsport, things will always go wrong. So we had supply chain issues. So the tank is made in Oregon, in the States, and we had issues where it was getting transported from there in the USA to go to Sweden, to go to Nuke Performance for the CFC unit to be built in it. And then from Sweden, it was obviously coming here, but we had problems with it getting sent to Ireland and back and forth to the European continent. And then when you're doing the build, you then run into several other issues. So it's one of these ones when all these things are constantly going wrong. And even when you end up at the track and then things are going wrong, you do wonder sometimes, going like, is this worth it? Because it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of hardship in terms of everybody that's there, your family, friends. Everybody commits so much to the sport.
And no one makes money in drifting.
And no one makes money at it. No one makes money in this sport. Like if you want to become a millionaire in motorsport, start by being a billionaire. The short answer is yes, it's 100% worth it, because all it takes is for everything to fall into place for one event, and it goes your way and you make it onto the podium, and it's the best feeling in the world. And it just all comes together, and you're just, unfortunately, as soon as you get that, all you end up doing is chasing the dream constantly. We're basically drug addicts at this point.
But if you ever lose that, it's time to pack up, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. If you ever lose that drive, which is one of the reasons why I kind of constantly feel that we have to be taking it to the next level. I feel if we kind of stayed stagnant and just kept doing the same thing and we weren't getting anywhere and progressing to the next level, then I would start to feel like, what's the point in this? And then I would lose interest. And I have been in certain circumstances like that where you've been on track and you're maybe going into qualifying and you know that yourself that you're not 100% focused. And if you get to a stage like that, you're not in a good place, because if you're not putting 100% focus into this, it's not going to pay off for you. I like the fact that we constantly try and push to the next level, go for Driftmasters. Were we ready for Driftmasters at the time? Probably not, but we've never been ready for any jump we've ever made. The best way to learn is in at the deep end with the big boys.